We are St. Paul Jewish Federation, and we believe no Jew should ever feel alone.
We exist to ensure the lasting presence of an inclusive and vibrant Jewish community in St. Paul.
One in which all members feel seen, understood, and supported.
Working alongside individuals, organizations, and synagogues, we utilize our unique vantage point to listen to the many voices in our community.
Creating a robust Jewish presence, ensuring all Jews feel welcome and excited to live in St. Paul.
St. Paul Jewish Federation is committed to the vitality and financial stability of our community.
We unite to care for the most vulnerable in St. Paul, Israel, and 70 countries around the world.
We provide pathways to engage in Jewish life.
We inspire leadership, philanthropy, and initiatives that impact our community.
We are St. Paul Jewish Federation, and everything we do is thanks to supporters like you.
Thank you, Federation!
Welcome everyone to the 86th annual meeting of the St. Paul Jewish Federation. We'll recognize that we still need to meet virtually tonight, but hopefully this will be the last year that we have to meet virtually out of necessity. We would just a little bit of ground rules. We'll ask everyone to mute themselves to improve the audio quality of the meeting. Only those who are on the schedule as speaking should be unmuted. If you have technical difficulties, please send a message in the chat to Dan Mogelson. You can access the chat usually at the bottom of your screen, depending on what kind of device you're using. And with that, I will call on Rabbi Adam Rubin of Beth Jacob Congregation to give the Devar Torah, and he'll be followed by Cantor Josh Feinblum, Cantor and Director of Education at Temple of Aaron, to lead us in singing God Bless America and Haktikva. Rabbi Rubin.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Nice to be with you this evening. I'm honored to have been asked to offer short teaching. You can hear me, yes?
Yes.
Great. Terrific. All right, great. So I want to speak to you this evening, again, very briefly, about how to disagree. And I say that because, and I want to focus on this because I think we all know that in light of the recent tensions in the Middle East and the conflict in Gaza, and also arguments about Israel's recent, its negotiations to come up with a new government, there's just a lot of anger and tension within the Jewish community. And I think it seems to me fitting that for a kind of Klal Yisrael organization like the Jewish Federation of St. Paul, one of its, the first principles of how we work in the community is how we're able to respect one another and to respectfully disagree. And so I want to draw on this week's Torah portion, Parshat Korach, to talk a little bit about this. And in doing so, I want to give credit to Rabbi Jonathan Sachs of blessed memory, who offers a beautiful teaching on exactly this point, about how we can respectfully come to different conclusions about tough issues. So I'm guessing many of you remember the story of Korach, who led a rebellion against Moshe and his brother Aaron, who was resentful about Moshe's position and essentially accused him of lording it over everyone, and asserting that everyone was equally holy. Why were Moshe and Aaron so special? For our sages, Korach was the embodiment of what might be called an argument that was not for the sake of heaven. And they contrasted this with the schools of Hillel and Shammai, the rabbinic schools of Hillel and Shammai, who argued l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven. And the difference between them is clear. According to Rabbi Ovadia Bartanura, a great sage who lived in Italy, who wrote a commentary on the Mishnah, an argument that is for the sake of heaven is an argument for the sake of truth. And an argument that is not for the sake of not for the sake of heaven, is an argument put forth for the sake of victory and power. And those, of course, are two very different things. Now, just a reminder, in the rebellion itself, there are different parties. Korach himself was from the tribe of Levi. Datan and Aviram, his co-conspirators, came from the tribe of Reuven. And there were 250 leaders from different tribes, the Torah tells us, and each had a specific grievance. The 250 leaders resented the fact that leadership had been taken away from them and given to the Levites after the sin of the golden calf. Datan and Aviram felt aggrieved that their tribe, descendants of Jacob's firstborn, the tribe of Reuven, had been given no special status at all. And Korah came from Levi, and it seems clear from the account of the Torah that he wanted to be the high priest. He wanted to have the job that Aaron had. So all of them had, if you will, a grievance, and they all sought to bring down Moshe and Aaron and put themselves higher. And the text gives us a clear picture of how the rebels understood leadership. Their claim against Moshe and Aaron was, "Why then do you set yourself above the Lord's assembly?" in the Torah's words. And later, Datan and Aviram said to Moshe, "And now you also want to lord it over us?" And a general rule, according to Rabbi Sachs, is if you want to understand resentment, listen to what people accuse others of, and you will then know what they themselves want. So they themselves, it seems, wanted to lord it over everybody else. And of course, we know that Moshe's greatest character trait was humility, was exactly the opposite of wanting to lord it over everybody else. I just conclude by contrasting this rebellion with Hillel and Shammai. And they show us a path to how to respectfully disagree. And so I cite the following text to you. It's from the Babylonian Talmud, and it reads as follows. For 3 years, there was a dispute between the schools of Shammai and Hillel. The former claimed the law is in agreement with our views, and the latter insisted, no, the law is in agreement with our views. Then a voice from heaven announced, these and these are the words of the living God, Elu ve'elu divrei Elohim Chaim. But the law is in accordance with the school of Hillel. It continues, since both these and those are the words of the living God, why was the school of Hillel entitled to have the law determined in accordance with their rulings? Answer, because they were kind and modest. They studied both their own rulings and those of the school of Shammai, their opponents. And they were even so humble as to mention the teachings of the school of Shammai before their own. So this is an incredibly beautiful portrait of the rabbinic ideal. We learn by listening to the views of our opponents, at times even before our own. And this, I think, is absolutely critical to develop a true ability to listen and to learn from those with whom we disagree. And so I wish, as we begin this annual meeting of the St. Paul Jewish Federation, that we step in the holy path of our ancestors Hillel and Shammai, and that we commit ourselves to a loving, to an ability to have loving disagreements with those with whom we differ, and to always remember that underneath it all, we are part of one people, we have one heart and one spirit, and I wish this meeting to be very successful and in that spirit. Have a good evening. And I'll
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you so much, Yasher Koach, and thanks again. With that, we'll go to Cantor Josh to lead us in God Bless America and Hatikva.
You can rise if you wish to, or you can stay seated. This is a Zoom life that we're living in, so it is fully up to you. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home sweet home. God bless America. my home, sweet home. Oh Lord, balevav penima, nefesh Yehudi homia, ufate mizrach kadima, ayin letzion Sophia, od lo avda tikvateinu, hatikva bat shnot alapayim, liot amchoshi be'aretzeinu, Eretz Zion Yerushalayim, liot amchoshi be'aretzeinu, Eretz Zion Yerushalayim.
Thank you, Ken or Josh. So thanks to everyone for coming. What we're going to do now, here's our agenda for the night. And then you can sort of take a look at that. That's roughly the order we're planning to do things in. And then rather than recognize all the leaders of the various agencies, organizations, and our synagogues who are with us tonight, I'll refer you to the slides that are going to come on and thank each of you for your leadership and support. So there we go. Thank you. So thanks to everybody for everything you've done, everything you do. We really can't say enough about how much we appreciate your role in the community and your leadership. And welcome especially to our newest rabbis, St. Temple of Aaron's new rabbis, Rachel and Marcus Rubenstein, and family. So welcome to the Twin Cities. Welcome to St. Paul. We're so glad to have you here. With that, I will call to order the 86th annual meeting of the St. Paul Jewish Federation. I will ask that the minutes of last year's, the reading of the minutes from last year's annual meeting be waived. And if there's no objection to that, we'll continue. Thank you. So the first item of business here, and I won't be long, is my president's report. What a year. I just have a few moments to highlight some of the bright spots this past year, but what a year. You know, what a tragic, momentous year it's been since our last annual meeting. I mean, life has been unbelievably hard. We've had more than 597,000 deaths from COVID-19 in the United States alone. We've lost loved ones. Our lives were severely disrupted by the pandemic. The American economy just about collapsed. And all our community institutions and the people they serve were disrupted. And yet, despite all that, our Federation donors stepped up. Our board stepped up. Our staff stepped up. Our national umbrella organization, the Jewish Federations of North America, stepped up. In the face of unprecedented adversity, everyone kept working to keep our Jewish community safe and healthy and help the broader community that we serve as well. Words can't express how much I appreciate all of you for that. I'm proud of our board's work this past year. We raised more than $1.9 million in our 2020 annual campaign. Thanks to all our ambassadors and donors for that. We also launched the Yad B'Yad campaign for COVID-19 related relief, headed by Jimmy Levine. Jimmy, Wherever you are out there in Zoom land, thank you. We also launched recently our 2021 campaign under the creative and passionate leadership of Ron Matz, Ellen Milovitz, Bonnie Resnick, and Marianne Barrows Work. That campaign is an excellent start. Thank you to all four chairs, and you'll hear more about that as we go along tonight. We welcomed several new board members last July to our leaner board. We had a successful board retreat over Zoom in January. That was a first, obviously. We have several more new members coming on for the new board year, and you'll hear more about that a bit later tonight as well. A task force headed by our board member, Jason Devine, examined issues related to the timing of our fundraising and allocations and recommended improvements so that we can eventually, and soon, we hope, raise money before we give it out. And you would think that would be intuitive, but it's not as easy as it looks because of the timing of some of our different fiscal years, campaign years, allocation years, and so forth. But that committee did great work, and we really appreciate that. Also, after more than a year of work, our marketing committee, chaired by Jennifer Kaplan and composed of board members, staff, and volunteer experts, finalized an updated, inspiring purpose statement and commitment, which our board has approved. You've seen that tonight on the slides that were going around in the beginning, and it's on our website if you'd like to take a longer look at that. In 2019, we partnered with the Minneapolis Jewish Federation and the Harry Gay Charitable Foundation to conduct the Twin Cities Jewish Population Study, the first survey of our community conducted in 15 years. The report was presented to the community last year, around this time last year, and we continue to follow up on the results, which essentially and happily were a growing East Metro Jewish community. And then last but not least, after the murder last year of George Floyd, we started an effort to re-examine our organization and ourselves to suffuse diversity, equity, and inclusion into everything we do. So far this year, we've had very insightful conversations with Rafi Flerbush and Rabbi Isaiah Rothstein, both of whom you will hear more from tonight. We have our work cut out for us. It seems like every week we receive a great idea from our board or our staff or our volunteers or others in the community for a community need or an initiative or an organization that we should fund. I fielded an email about one of those just earlier today, in fact. But we can only consider and fund those requests if we can raise more money, especially assuming, and we do assume, that we don't want to cut back existing beneficiary agencies that we send money to. Running flat campaigns is a recipe for stagnation of our community, and running decreasing campaigns is even worse. I won't even play that one out. Bringing all of this together and sort of wrapping up here, like I've said before, we're part of a movement, and that word can't be overstated, to build and strengthen the Jewish community so we can hand over a strong and stronger community to the succeeding generations. This is a critical time for that effort in many ways. We need all hands on deck, not just a relatively select few. Please help us and continue helping us, because many of you are already helping us, raise the funds needed for the community, for all those new initiatives, for the existing worthy agencies and programs that are already underway. Also, join one of our committees, spread the word and get your friends involved. Contact us with your ideas and questions. Let's do this together and better than before. And when we do, let's celebrate it together in person. Imagine that. So again, thank you. And with that, we'll transition to our next order of business, which is that I have some awards to present virtually. First is the Harlan Stern Volunteer of the Year Award. Volunteers give of their time, money, and selves. They're essential in the lives of those whom they aid and the organization they're a part of. Harlan Stern was such a volunteer, and when he passed away at a much too young age of 60 in 2018, the Federation created the Harlan Stern Volunteer of the Year Award in his memory. This year, the award is presented to Dr. Jimmy Levine, who, during the COVID-19 crisis, stepped up to lead the Yad B'Yad COVID relief campaign, which raised vital funds for our local agencies while they navigated this unprecedented crisis. Through Jimmy's leadership and determination, we secured more than $400,000 in donations. In recognition of leading the Yad B'Yad campaign, we present Jimmy a gift of a yad. Yad B'Yad translates to hand in hand. A yad, though, besides meaning hand, is of course a ritual item that you use to read from the Torah, so that you don't touch or overly touch the Torah, and we maintain the sanctity of the Torah thereby. The yad we present also symbolizes the sacred work that is done when one raises funds on behalf of the community. So, Jimmy, congratulations, and why don't you come on, unmute, and say a few words?
Well, thank you very much for this wonderful honor, and thank you to everybody who helped participated in the Yad B'Yad campaign. And this memorable campaign was able to help our beneficiary agencies and so many in the community who are at greatest risk. And it was really a labor of love to be able to be part of it. Many of you don't know that Harlan and I have a connection. His son and my son are the same age. And we would spend many nights watching our sons play baseball. And on one occasion, a foul ball was hit. And Harlan said, "Please return that foul ball for a free bag of popcorn." And that might not mean a lot to most of you, but to anybody that grew up in St. Louis Park and played Little League baseball behind Saul's supermarket, it was immediately known what that phrase meant. And Harlan and I talked and realized that we both played Little League on the same fields when we were younger. So thank you to everybody for this great honor.
Thank you, Jimmy. And congratulations again. And I'll just add one other note about Harlan. When I first moved here about 22 years ago and got involved in Super Sunday, Harlan stood out. You could tell Harlan was special. He was just a leader and a tireless volunteer. And so, we're so honored to be able to give that award out in his name.
May I say something? I was Harlan's aunt, and he was a sweetheart. I knew him since he was a child, and we became very close. And I just want everybody to know that his son is getting married in August, and we're going to go to the wedding in Bethesda, Maryland. I think that, who was it, Jimmy? I think Jimmy would like to hear that his son is getting married. Thank you.
Is that Evan? Mazel tov.
No, Adam.
Oh, okay. Got it. Because the kids used to come to Super Sunday as well and help us get the cards prepared and everything. And it just was a wonderful sight. So, okay. Well, thanks everybody for that. Thank you, Jimmy. We also have a Campaigners of the Year award. And with that, the recipients of the Campaigners of the Year award are Don and Rhoda Maines. Each year, we recognize an exceptional volunteer who's involved with their annual campaign. It's not an easy selection, as we have many extraordinary volunteers involved with the campaign. This year, though, we have selected 2 volunteers who not only helped ensure the success of the 2020 campaign, they have been involved for decades in the campaign and have even previously chaired it when we had a men's and women's divisions. For the 2020 campaign, Don and Rhoda agreed to come out of retirement and take on more leadership roles, and agreed to co-chair the 2020 campaign along with Alan Milovitz and Bonnie Resnick. Rhoda and Don have helped raise tens of millions of dollars for the Federation, and we appreciate so much their commitment to the Federation and the St. Paul Jewish community. And then I would add too, that the great work is being done this year by their co-chairs as well. Rhoda and Don, here is a rendering of your award virtually. I hope they're with us tonight. And can say a few words if you'd like. If not, with that, we will thank Don and Rhoda again. Oh, do I hear them?
Well, thank you. We're very honored to receive this award. We live in a wonderful community. I was born here, so I know it well. I've been involved in campaigns really since the formation of the state of Israel. I think I got most of you beat on that back in 1948. To say it's a wonderful community. A campaign is so important to everything we do. And we want to thank the ambassadors, everyone who worked on a campaign in the most difficult year we've ever had. And yet, as you've indicated, Rick, we had a pretty successful campaign year. I know we'll do even better this year under the chairmanship. Our co-chairs, by the way, Harlan and Bonnie, are still on board, and they'll do a terrific job. Thank you so much. And we just love being a part of the community.
Well, you are certainly great role models, and we just appreciate you so much. With that, we will transition to our nominating committee, and I'll hand the floor to Mark Edelman, our past president.
Thank you, Rick. First, though, I'd like to just say that, as probably most of you know, the work of a nominating committee to choose new members for a board, to bring on people with the right skill sets and experience and education, et cetera, to fit in the board, to work with the other board members is always a challenge. And I can't tell you how proud I am of the committee that we had to accomplish this task this year. And I want to thank them personally. They were, as you can see from the slide, they were Aaron Baldinger, Wendy Baldinger, Adi Leviathan, Rick Linsk, and David Milovitz. Thank you all very much. We have 9 members that we're electing today. Sarah McVicker will be for a 1-year term to fill a current term, and hopefully she'll be re-elected next year for another 3 years. And then for a 3-year term, Aaron Beal, Bruce Goldfarb, Joe Lane, Rick Linsk, David Milovitz, Sarah Rice, Andrew Seiler, and Mark Usum. And you can see the names of the people who are brand new to the board this year with the asterisks. So at this time, on behalf of the nominating committee, I'd like to move the nomination of these 9 people to our 21-22 board.
Second.
Rick?
Oh, second. So, and we'll call for a vote. Having had a second on the motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great, thank you. Unmute and say aye. All opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? There we go. Thank you all, and congratulations to the new board members. Okay, and I want to also acknowledge our outgoing board members. We have such a great board, and we have people who've been on it a very long time and are ready for some other adventures. And we want to thank them for their service to this point. Sharon Benjamin, John Brode-Farber, Deb Frischberg, Brian Kamen, Ron Matz, who's doing, of course, a great job with the campaign this year, and Lynn Sanders. And so thanks to all of them for their service on the board. With that, these are our officers. Due to our new bylaws, officers are elected by the board. So they'll continue to serve in their current capacity, and we don't need action by the membership on the officers tonight. So that is that. Next up I have the pleasure of telling you that we're going to have an introduction of our keynote speaker tonight by Rafi Forbush, who many of you know from all his different dynamic roles in the community. So I'll just stand back and we will hear from Rafi.
Good evening. My name is Rafi Forbush, and I am the founder and executive director of the Multiracial Jewish Association of Minnesota. Not long after the murder of George Floyd, I was seeking advice from other Jews of color around the country, particularly those who were sharing their experiences and connecting Jews of color to each other. So, of course, during that time, I reached out to Rabbi Isaiah Rothstein. Rabbi Rothstein is an important voice for change and growth in the Jewish community, not only focused on racial equity, but also the environment, democracy, and the continued strength of our people. He is the co-founder of the Jewish Youth Climate Movement and Kamocha, a community for Black Orthodox Jews, and currently serves as rabbinic scholar and public affairs advisor for the Jewish Federation of North America. Most recently, he was rabbi in residence at Hazon, the Jewish Lab for Sustainability. He is also a member of the Schusterman Foundation ROI Fellowship and was listed one of the Jewish Week's 36 under 36. Needless to say, this is a busy man. And when he's not working to keep the world safe for democracy, he's writing a musical about Queen Esther. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce tonight's keynote speaker, my friend and colleague, Rabbi Isaiah Joseph Rothstein. Good.
Wow. First and foremost, Rafi, wherever you are in the ether, thank you for those generous introductions. And to each of you, being able to participate with you and hearing about the accomplishments from your community, I'm sold. I would love to be involved. I would love to hopefully visit you in person. But for today, I'm tuning in from my apartment in Harlem, New York. And really just a big thank you to Rick, to Ted, to the rest of the leadership for bringing me to speak with you a little bit tonight. So as we kick off and as we start, I would love if you would just reflect from the things that you heard so far tonight. If you could, the chat function, as Rick told us earlier, at the bottom of your screen, even putting in the chat, if there's a word or two that is emerging for you of what's coming up as you reflect on the accomplishments this year, if that's something you're able to do by commenting in the chat. I don't know if the chat function is fully open for everybody now that I'm looking, but if we were, that would be so special. Is it open for everybody? Do you see the chat? Can you chat to us? Great. Friends, just even as we go into this moment, big accomplishments that we've been having this year. And when Rick was sharing before about the fact that we're a movement, we're a community that is global, the work that the federations have done over the last 100 years plus, and thinking about the last 86 years, wow, of impact. We know that the 21st century is bringing us to different kinds of moments. And if, by the way, friends, if possible to open the chat, I would love for us to flow, because there's going to be different things that I bring up tonight that I would love to share with you, if possible. And so here it is. We're going to begin. I'm going to share my screen. And let me just see if this works for everybody. Okay, we're going to get there. The screen share. Let's see if this is coming through. Do you see the screen share here, friends? Okay. So again, a big thank you. It's good to be here with you. And for our time together, I'll briefly just share a little bit about myself, about the work we're doing at Jewish Federations with our JEDI initiative. JEDI standing for Jewish Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And we'll also speak about more about this movement, more about who we are, the Jewish Federations, the work we've done, the work we'll continue to do. And then I also hope we could just have a Q&A. I would love to engage with you on some of the things that you're thinking about when you think about Jewish equity, diversity and inclusion, or racial justice, civil rights, intergroup relations. What emerges for you is also a question I hope we could ask throughout our time together. So with that, also a few of our goals, just some of the things I want to share with you is some of the overview of our work, what we've been up to, how we've hopefully will continue to partner with you. We'll also define some of the what and the why behind our work with Jedi. And I also would hope we could continue the conversation really beyond even just these moments. Other things, if you would like to add into our mix, I'm seeing that the chat is open. Thank you, Kimberly, really appreciate it. Finding new paths forward. Yeah, friends, I mean, again, it's not the same as in person. Please God, it should be soon that we are. But again, the fact that we are coming together over Zoom, sometimes the chat is one of our functions. Finding new paths, grateful for our Jewish community, and Harlan, Stern, Jimmy, and Rhoda and Don, Amen, L'chaim, inclusion of all of us, passion and hard work. I've been hearing that too. Again, I'm moved. It's across the street and it's virtual, but I am moved by the work that you have been doing, even though I haven't even been to St. Paul just yet. So friends, we'll jump in. So here's a little bit about me. These are some pictures that are part of my life journey. You know, as a mixed race Jew, as a Jew of color, I'll tell you this first picture on the left of my parents. They've been married for about 40 years before the term Jew of color was even used. And actually, if you've been following the Pew Research Center in the last Pew study, they don't even use the term Jew of color. I think it's something we could even come back to. They actually use racial and ethnic diversity. And I'm one in a million, some say there's about 1 million Jewish people of color in America. Obviously, that is fuzzy. But what I'll tell you is growing up in a mixed race Chabad family in Muncie, New York, we were kind of one of the only families. The second picture is me and my mother. And then the third picture is my father and me and my brother with the Lubavitcher Rebbe of blessed memory. And then the picture on my right is, you know, my family is kind of like modern Orthodox meets Chabad meets like citizens of the world, because even half my family is not Jewish. They're Methodist, they're Buddhist, they're Muslim. And what brought me to this moment, in addition to being invited here by your gracious leadership, is also for sure how I was raised. You know, in Muncie, there were literally hundreds of synagogues. There were dozens of synagogues within a mile radius of where I grew up. And my friends and I, where did we hang out? We hung out at the 7-Elevens. We hung out at the mobile gas stations. We hung out in the woods. And so when I think about belonging, which is really our top line goal of Jedi, belonging for all of us, that we could feel like we're a part of community, I think about how I was raised. I also think about the 7 birthright trips that I staffed, meeting secular Jews or mostly unaffiliated Jews from America and going to Israel with them and hearing about their Jewish stories and like their experiences of not feeling like completely aligned with the Jewish community. And I'm like, oh, you too? Like, we all have Jewish baggage. Like, let's all figure out how we can build community together. And the third picture, going around the world with JDC, that was just me in Ethiopia. And then this picture also is like a turning point. It was about 2015, the one on the far right, which was a gathering of Jewish people of color with 4 or 5 foundations talking about racial equity in the Jewish community. It was probably one of the first times where I felt like there was a collective effort of this scale. And this actually turned into the Jews of Color Initiative just about a year later. And, you know, as I transition and share with you about working at JFNA, it's a big honor. And it was even a year ago, I didn't even think I would be working at Jewish Federations of North America. You know, it was just about a year next week when Eric Fingerhut called me, the CEO of JFNA, and him and I had been in a relationship at that point. The first picture, you know, I've been very involved in the UJ in New York, but also Chazon, where I previously worked, started sharing office space with JFNA. I had the opportunity to do a pre-Rosh Hashanah program. I had a chance to speak at the GA Fed Lab 2 years ago. And so Eric called me saying, listen, when it comes to racial justice, Jews of color, equity, diversity, inclusion, we want a long-term sustainable approach to this work. Yes, doing trainings, having a 3-part, bringing a consultant for a few months, that's great, but we want something that's homegrown, that's a part of our communities, that's a part of our federations, how we think, our values, our legacy, what we hold. And so Eric said, would you join our staff? And I said, sure, but what exactly do you want me to do? He's like, that's a great question. I'm hoping that you'll help us figure that out. I was like, great, well, what does success look like? He's like, that's another question I want you to hopefully answer for us. And we kind of jumped right in, really as a team, in different ways. And, what was one of the things that Eric said to me on that first call was he said that I picture the federation system like a tent. If it's a building, then you can't, yes, you could renovate, but you got to break down a building. But a tent, you take out the poles, you expand, if you need to make it bigger, there's ways you can do that. If you need to make it wider, taller, there's ways you can do that. And thinking about our work and how we evolve and grow as a system, as a movement, again, going back to what Rick said about creating flourishing Jewish communities in North America and around the world, how do we ensure that our tent is wide enough, or to borrow from Hamilton, so that the world is wide enough, right, for all of us to be included. So with that, friends, I'll take just about another 10 minutes or so before I'm hoping we could go into conversation together. And really, I would love to hear what's on your mind, on your heart, what you're thinking about. And really, the goal is to connect, right? And if there's questions you want to ask in the chat privately, because we're not sure, is this how to, but we're a family. Like, let's be in this together. So how we came to the acronym JEDI, I know some of you are like, is that copyrighted? Are you going to get in trouble with Star Wars? What's this? What's that? I thought I was the one who's like, oh, DEI, and then I Googled it, and there's actually about a dozen organizations I found that use from the alphabet soup of acronyms, put the J, E, D, and I. I definitely can give you a longer, Talmudic answer of the E before the D, or what, all those things, because there really is some chachma, as they say, some wisdom to that equity equals diversity and inclusion. So D, so the equation is something there. But the Jewish part, why are we putting the Jewish? And that's something I think what we're doing through the Federation is because so many of these conversations, the Jewish people, we are not defined or constrained to one time or era.
Oh, it looks like I cut out. Do you hear me now? Okay, sorry about that. That was weird. We're not constrained to one moment in time, and so frameworks around conversations around identity, around how we think about this generation, having the Jewish integrated throughout our work is essential to everything that we are building together. And I hope that through the next few minutes, I would just love to define what we mean when we say Jewish, what we mean when we say equity, diversity, and inclusion. So first and foremost, the 3 bullet points that I find interesting about the Jewish lens. One is Yehudim, or Jews, is actually a term that was distinctly used for us when we were in exile, outside of our home, diaspora, wandering, right? Looking. There's something about that we are people who, by default, the strength of us are how we became a global people. And exile, as complex as it is, the name Jew also is a reminder of not being in our home and being splintered in certain respects. First used in the story of Purim. Ivri is also a really interesting Hebrew word. Hebrew is an interesting word because it means other. So we hold a strength of understanding what it means to be in relationship with something that is different. And we have texts, there's just so many texts that talk about highlighting this idea of difference. And we see that the characters, the paradigms of the Torah also holding this idea of ger v'toshav. I'm both a stranger with you and a resident. I hold multiple things. And even the word Yisrael, right? It means kisarita elokim v'anashim v'tuchal, to struggle with multiple realities, with the divine and with the physical. So that's just something that I would say in the Jewish for us. It all relates back to our EDI kind of conversations. There's the textbook definition for equity, but I just want to highlight for you a few bullet points. Equity is different than equality in the sense that equality is everyone gets the same shoes. I wear a size 12 and a half, I'm giving you a size 12 and a half. And equity would be everybody has different shoes. So you have different shoe size needs. So if I'm an organization, I say, everyone, we have X prescription of glasses. We're giving that to everybody. People are going to be like fumbling. They're not going to be able to see. They're not going to be able to walk well. They get blisters on their shoes. And what's beautiful about that is that when I think about it that way, equity is a synonym for tzedakah, because the mitzvah of tzedakah is need-based. It's what an individual needs. When we look at the source, de machsaro asher yichsar lo, according to what one is lacking, we are supposed to offer to them. So what does that mean to me then? The Jewish Federation System, since we started, is an organization focused on equity. Now, how we define it and get to that reality is something that I think we should continue to discuss together. There's a few other bullets here. We'll share the slide deck for anyone who's interested in going a little deeper. The only thing I'll say on diversity here is when we say we want to be more diverse, I encourage us to use the descriptor when we say diverse, because there's racially diverse, there's politically diverse, religiously diverse, right? Social diversity is so we're not diverse. Who can say that? What do you mean? If by default we're diverse, because each of us have, right, all of the amazing folks who are on this call, each of us have our own neshama, our own perspective, our own approach. So diversity shows up in a lot of different ways. And then finally, from the terms, what I want to also bring to us is from the textbook definition at the top, the intentional and ongoing. And that really is so much of the Jedi Initiative, is that we're on a generational timeline, how we think about this work. It's something that we are building upon. And I think there's beautiful teachings from the Jewish tradition that really highlight this idea of inclusivity. And really it's framed as loving others. Ahavat ger, loving the stranger. V'ahavta l'recha kamocha, you should love your neighbor like yourself. Inclusivity is really a love in a certain way. And really our hope is cultivating a sense of belonging. Beyond inclusion is really thinking about our top goal for Jedi is really building a culture of belonging. So here there's more, but what I'm really hoping for, in just the next moment or two, is I'll share what our top goals and lines of the Jedi Initiative are at JFNA, and then I'll pause there and hope to be with you a little bit more in discussion. So our mission of the Jedi Initiative, now that you have some of those definitions of Jedi, is to support the Jewish communal ecosystem in creating spaces and communities where all Jews and our loved ones and our families, regardless of their abilities, gender, who they love, their faith experience, or the color of their skin, right? This idea that we belong, this idea that we have a set, and again, it's not about one group of people. It's not, oh, well, Jews of color, it's about really all of us. They call that social equity. And we have 4 easy, I would hate to call them easy, it's ongoing work, but the way we frame getting to a place of equity or a culture of belonging is through ongoing education, which leads to engagement, which leads to empowerment, which brings us towards a frame of equity. Now, when we measure what we're doing at JFNA around measuring in these areas, we're really only measuring in the first 3. Education, so individual, family, organization, and that's thinking about increased awareness, knowledge base, how we implement and change policies and procedures. Engagement for us is really, we're measuring relationships that we have, the pipeline work that we do, how we're thinking about collaborations and partnerships. The empowerment work is our community relations, our government affairs, our public affairs, our philanthropy for the love of humanity, to empower others, our network weaving. And equity, it's harder to measure because it's a feeling. It's harder to measure. So we're really saying that we have an equity focus. And these three areas are how we get towards that culture of belonging. And as we turn to each of you to just hear a little bit more from what you're thinking about, what you're dreaming about, what you're like chewing on right now. Some of the work is also identifying the why. So some of this was the what, took you through our mission, the terms, defining the measurements, but the why, I'm not sure if you've heard of the book Start With Why by Simon Sinek. We constantly have to remind ourselves why we're doing things, like because we're just humans, and we get pulled in directions. And the why, I don't know what your why is for this work. So I shared like my why at the beginning, my background, Muncie, but in the Jewish communal ecosystem over the last year that I spent, I've identified some whys. Here's 7 of them that I'll just give each folks a moment just to take a look and pause, and then I'll just read them as well for those who are not able to see the screen. And I also wonder if you could put in the chat what else comes up for you about whys. Like why is Jedi important, right? Take a moment. So hopefully human dignity, right? Hopefully like that alone, just like, what do you mean? People, we have a spiritual moral obligation, B'Tselem Elokim, created in the divine image. It's a part of who we are to support those in need and to support those who are historically underrepresented or marginalized. It's a fact. Thank you, Ted. And I love that, Ted. I love that you're saying it's fundamental to our Jewish values. Also, as our lead, like really thank you for continuing to model that for us. Moving people from affiliation to belonging. Amen. Amen. That's, I think, this decade, by the way. There's like 2 words that I think this decade need a lot of. One is thinking about belonging, and 2 is coalitions, like collectives, committees, coalitions. I think that's like, I think this is some of what the decade is, hopefully, we're continuing to create. It feels personal. Yeah, that's also really important for us to remember about the why. Thank you for bringing that up, Jonathan, and also to say that it's personal and it's a need. But the why also helps remind us why it's personal, because each of us from a different perspective. Awesome. So we're going to transition just in a moment, but I do want to highlight that thinking about the culture wars. That's number 6. Identity politics, splintered communities, noise, not nuance. I'll tell you, the last few weeks, especially with the rise of anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, and how people bring the lens of American racism and kind of put that onto the story of Israel and really the struggles there. So much of the work that we're doing is broader than also the belonging piece. And I think it's recognizing that in the public social civil discourse where we're not able to cultivate discussions, that's also something about belonging, right? I don't see myself at home with you and your ideas, and how we bridge that divide. I think that there's something super powerful for us to think about, for the long term. And friends, there's much more. I was going to share some of my data points of the things that I did this year, but I realized for now that just with the sake of time, that one slide that I want to also show you around our projects is, do you see this, the projects? Mm-hmm. So we've basically, in order to address some of those issues that we just raised through some of the whys, we've launched a few different projects. One is our Jedi curriculum, and we've been working on our first semester. It's a 7-unit course. JFNA is finishing this course, and we have an online portal that we have for this 7-unit course, and we hope that we're able to bring this also to your community. And it's really, again, something that we offer because we understand that the role of education in helping us make informed choices about our own community, our own culture. We have our community cohorts that we're evolving to bring this work to life and capacity build. We have a council of organizations focused on social equity more broadly. So you'll see that we have representation around gender and disabilities and race and LGBTQ inclusion, and the idea is belonging together. Rafi Forbush, who's actually one of our steering committee members of MOAID. MOAID is our multiracial Jewish community network, and it's also a resource group. It's led by Jewish people of color in the federation system, professionals and volunteers. Kamocha, similarly, is really our scheme for all of Jedi, but for the Orthodox community, really translating and recognizing just the diversified needs, again, and thinking through. And at the end of the day, we try to meet people where they're at, so we plug them where they need to go. And then also how we show up in the public affairs space, bringing a Jedi lens to our strengths in government affairs on Capitol Hill, and then continuing the work. So this feels, it's a lot. What I'm sharing with you, I don't know what's coming up for you. It's a lot though, and it can sometimes feel like moving mountains, right? I mean, number one, we cannot move a mountain by ourselves. That's for sure. But it could feel like that. And I actually feel really inspired by who we are as a Jewish Federation system, because if there's anyone who's capable of moving mountains and have moved mountains, right, unlike any organization, I think in Jewish history, I genuinely mean that, we've been a light unto the nations during the most tragic, critical, transformative moments in the Jewish people's history, especially, over the last several decades of thinking through Soviet Jewry, the Holocaust, but going back again to World War I, friends, and I think that when it comes to moving the mountains and building flourishing Jewish communities, this is what I see as belonging. Creating a culture of belonging. What is belonging? Belonging is when we're, sorry?
Rabbi, I just wanted to see if I could squeeze in a couple of other questions that people have put in the chat.
Yes,
and
yes.
They do go to what you're talking about. So one of our community members asks, how can Federation help the Twin Cities be more welcoming to Jews of color?
Yes, thank you for that question. I mean, the question of how we're welcoming of specific populations. So I would start by saying the first mode or the foundation to the work is thinking about more broadly, how are we engaging with people from diversified backgrounds and supporting people more broadly? So that's the belonging question. How am I thinking about anyone when they're walking into our space? How are they feeling? How am I engaging them? What behaviors do we have in our communal spaces that keep people closer or keep people more distant? And, I love the synagogue model, don't get me wrong, but often synagogues have 3, 4, I mean, obviously it's a range, right? Depending on what synagogue you go to, but there's 3 or 4 traditional ways to engage in synagogue. There's prayer, there's Torah study, and there's food. And then there's community events, which include prayer, Torah study, and food. So what's interesting is when building a culture of belonging for everybody, we really signal to people who have felt maybe excluded that we're working towards that. And I think then from there, we start to develop those strengths, that beacon, that light that we want to show to all of our community members that this is a space that's yours. You should feel like you are a part of that space. And so then answering the question of Jewish people of color and how to engage Jews of color specifically, I think it all comes down to relationships, right? And building relationships for the sake of relationships, right? And not necessarily building relationships for the sake of someone's own identity and who they are and how they identify. So, on the question of the right ways for your local community, I would start by saying I would want to know your narrative on how you've engaged until now, your mapping of your local community and who you know. Those are some of the strengths-based model. What are you working with in your context? And then it's us slowly starting to think about what do we need to learn, education, how do we engagement with who and how, and also how are we in relationship to empower others in thinking through this.
Right. Switching back to your story that you showed us of your upbringing and your family. What was it like for your mother? Did the Chabad community in Muncie welcome her, or were there some issues there at the time?
Yeah, thank you. I would say that, you know, definitely both. Like that's the bottom line. Like there are plenty of people growing up in Muncie and being in a mixed race family. I'll also say that as the lightest skin, like I say sometimes I'm the undercover brother, you know, like from all my siblings, I've been able to navigate spaces. And so each of us had different experiences. But what I will say is that my mother, in her strength of who she is and how she raised us, um, she's an extrovert, she's an empath, she's a healer. And so I could tell you stories of, you know, I'll even just share one or two of how my mother taught me. I think both my parents, you know, I don't know if I would be here in this position, like what I'm doing now and becoming a rabbi, if it wasn't for how they modeled, how they show up. One story that my mother tells is that a rabbi would use the word schwarza, which is the N word essentially in Yiddish. And he would use it all the time in classes and when he was teaching Torah. And my mother went over to him after a class once and said, Rabbi, you're teaching Torah. Why are you using that term? And the rabbi said, oh, I'm not talking about you. Like that was I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about other people. And my mom said, well, what would you do? The rabbi said to my mother, well, what would you do if the Rebbe used the word Schwarza? And my mother said the Rebbe would never use the word Schwarza. And to that, the rabbi stopped using the word. And I just think about like the timing and her knowing who she's speaking to and how to approach them. Another story, the first time I learned that that my family was like a unicorn to like everyone else in our town basically was in second grade when a little boy said to me that I wasn't Jewish because my mom is Black. And I believed him. I was like, oh my gosh, he's right. And I started crying. And the rabbi brought me to the principal's office. The principal bribed me genuinely with a calculator watch, like these, I don't know if you remember, it's like the Apple Watch of the 80s and 90s were like these like little calculator watches. And he gave that to me. And the rabbi said not to tell my mother. And I get home and my mother sees this calculator watch. Every kid wanted one of these. And she's like, where'd you get this watch? And I said, oh, Rabbi so-and-so told me not to tell you that a kid said you're not Jewish because you're Black. And he gave me a calculator watch. And my mother, like really in her way, and she was able to get through to people. She was able to meet people where they were at. She tried not being judgmental. She understood that there was fear and the emotions behind people and how they acted. And she took the watch from me. And I remember going to the principal's office and I sat outside and my mom sat with him for 35 minutes, 40 minutes. You know, I don't know if you could picture like a Muncie, like ultra-Orthodox rabbi, like, you know, my mom, like in a room negotiating about, you know, racial equity issues in the school and what's appropriate and what's not. But like, that's kind of how we were raised. And it gave us muscles, you know?
That's great. That's great. Well, how about one more? I think you kind of touched on this before, but one of our community members also asked, what does success in the Jedi efforts look like? What's on the other end at the end of the rainbow, if you will?
Yes, thank you for that. You know, there's a few answers to that question. One answer to that question is that success looks different for every organization because this work is on a continuum, right? And every organization is starting from different places, and ultimately there are different needs for every organization. There's different contexts, there's different orientations, key stakeholders. Organizations are made up of people, right? So it's like actually every organization has its own context. So measuring success, again, how we're measuring success are based on our learning and education and how we are deepening that educational capacity, engagement, who we're in relationship with, and representation in our communities and leadership decision-making tables, who's our our budget and our agenda of how we invest in creating a culture of belonging for our 21st century communities, right? Like certain things under education, engagement, and empowerment are areas where we are measuring success. But ultimately, I think that like I see at the backdrop of everything that we're doing with JFNA and JEDI, the foundation to the work is really the 2020 Pew study, like showing how Jews are engaging in Jewish life in the 21st century, and how are we literally thinking about social, like belonging and bringing people to the table from where they are and not trying to push them to be something that they're not. And if we're able to look in 20 years from now where people feel a sense of belonging and connectedness to their Judaism, where people feel seen, especially for us as the federation system, seen within the Jewish communal institutional life, which we know, friends, only a third of Jewish communal life engages with the Jewish communal ecosystem, right? So for me, so much of our work is actually also how we're creating that engagement pipeline for younger folks to feel like, yeah, these are my people. I see myself in what we're building, you know?
That's great. Well, thank you. This is where if we were together, there'd be a standing O for you. So everybody can, do that and give you a virtual standing ovation. Thank you so much for sharing your story and sharing all these great sort of, thoughts, reflections, strategies on how we can grow together. Really, really appreciate it.
Please, and thank you. Thank you. It's my honor.
Great. Well, it feels like a prosaic moment, but we're going to get our CEO report from our CEO, Ted Flom. Thanks again, Rabbi Rothstein. Ted, you are up.
Do I have to be? After hearing Rabbi Rothstein, I'm humbled and touched by his words, and they're so true to what the Federation has to do as far as reaching out and reaching every segment of our community, because we are a strong community when every single Jew feels that they are invested and they belong. And it underscores the work that the marketing committee did earlier this year when they came up with a new value statement that says that no Jew should ever feel alone, that they are part of our community. So Rabbi, thank you so much. We have our work cut out. So 2 years ago, I made a commitment to the community to restore our community's trust in the Federation and strengthen our role in building a strong Jewish community. And I vowed that we would do this by continuing to support our traditional partner agencies, which connect all Jews to our local and global Jewish community. One way we measure whether we have been successful is whether we've been able to attract new volunteers, new donors, and increase our campaign. And despite the challenges that COVID presented, I have to say that I feel we've been fairly successful. We have reached out and recruited new volunteers, many who will be future leaders of our community, to join our board, to join committees, to join task forces, and to get involved with our annual campaign. Many new volunteers are right here on this Zoom call, and their future or their current board members join our board, and I'm so excited and delighted to have them and welcome them. We have 20 more campaign ambassadors this year than we had last year, which is huge. That's 1/3 more people volunteering to go out and raise money on behalf of the community. We have young adults who are involved with our Giving Circle groups at Mount Zion and at Jewish Family Service, who had a taste of what decision-making and allocations means. And now many of them are now on our CBRC allocation committee. We constantly are trying to engage young Jews to be involved through outreach and through our Yala program. I'm very excited that 2 of our young board members, Ezra Strom and Aaron Beal, have offered to chair a new initiative to reach out to their peers to get them engaged with the Federation. These are all very positive signs. Our annual campaign is getting stronger. Donors who stopped giving are returning as donors, and current donors are increasing their commitments to the annual campaign. And these results can be attributed to our outreach efforts and to the campaign leadership of Ron and Mary Ann and Bonnie and Ron and Alan. They've done an incredible job. And again, we have more than 60 volunteer ambassadors out in the community raising money and sharing their stories. Last year, we provided $1 million in funding from our annual campaign to our local, national, overseas partner agencies. And on top of that, we added another almost $500,000 to support local agencies in COVID relief. And as Rick mentioned, thank you, Jimmy, who helped chair that effort. And most recently, within the last week or so, we raised and allocated another $10,000 to Jaffe to address the needs that were created by the rocket fires of Hamas and the urgency that created. We have very generous donors in our community. We have a history of having generous donors, and we are so lucky. As Don Main said, he's grown up in this community and he knows the value and how special St. Paul is. I want to also say, and we did this last year, I'll reiterate it, the professionals that are leading our agencies, our local agencies and synagogues are outstanding. And we are fortunate to have them. They have done an incredible job navigating their agencies and Jewish institutions during this terrible pandemic. And I think they are coming out, and I know they're coming out stronger than they were a year ago. They've risen to the occasion. And again, I am delighted to call them colleagues and friends. Besides allocating funds through our campaigns and special initiatives, I want to emphasize that Federation, besides raising money, also provides valuable programs to our community. Programs that Rabbi Rothstein sort of outlined that we need to, in order for us to reach out. If all we're doing is raising money and not making people feel like they really belong, then we're not really doing our job. We must engage all members, all segments of our community. And one of the ways we do that is through programming. Our PJ Library and PJ Our Way programs reach more than 600 Jewish children and their families, encouraging parents to read the free Jewish books that they receive each month to their children, and then come and participate in PJ Library programs or PJ Our Way programs so that they get to know each other and we build community through that. Our Shlichut program continues to reach thousands of members of our community, introducing them to Israel, its people, its society, and its culture. We collaborate with our local synagogues and Jewish agencies to provide Israel-related programming. And I'll tell you, our Partnership Together program builds personal relationships between the St. Paul Jewish community and Israelis who live in our partnership region. Through exchange programs, collaborations, visits, and Zoom calls, we get to know each other and establish true relationships and friendships. Both of our Shlichut programs and our Partnership Together programs are actually more important than ever. In the last month or so, we are witnessing efforts to isolate Israel from American supporters and even from members within our own Jewish community through a campaign of, and as Rabbi Rothstein mentioned, misinformation and demonization of Israel. As an organization committed to the welfare of Jews wherever they live, including Israel, we have a responsibility to counter these efforts, and our P2G and Shlichut programs do that. During the recent conflict between Israel and Hamas, we arranged a Zoom call with our partnership region to let them know that we are thinking of them and we are there for them and they have our support. It was our partnership region, I remind the community, it was our partnership region that provided Shalom with 1,000 state-of-the-art face shields last year when PPE equipment was scarce. This year, thanks to funding from the Fishman Trust, we were able to collaborate with the JCRC and Talmud Torah to develop a curriculum for 16 to 18-year-olds based on Yossi Klein Halevi's book, Letters to My Palestinian Neighbor. The purpose was to help better prepare teenagers to understand the complexities and nuances, again, using Rabbi Rothstein's words, nuances of the Arab-Israel conflict, as they would soon be going to college. 29 pre-college teens participated in a 6-session learning program, each session led by a Twin Cities rabbi, and the 6th session led by Yossi Klein Halevi, the author of the book. The response from the students was extraordinary. Let me give you some quotes that we got. 1, I am grateful that I was able to take this class and learn much more about the conflict than I ever knew, both from my peers, the rabbis, and the book. Especially as I am going off to college next year. I am glad that I am more educated on the conflict so that I can be more comfortable engaging in discussion on campus. Another one, the class allowed me a very meaningful discussion about different ideas from either side and what can be done to possibly resolve the conflict. And a third, wow, it was so cool to listen to many perspectives of people at many different congregations and quote unquote degrees of Judaism. I've definitely been talking about the content of the class with my friends and family, and it's very engaging. This is what Federation does. And I want to tell you, I want to do a shout out to Sally Friedman and Holly Broad-Farber from the JCRC and Heidi Toshis from Talmud Torah, who deserve credit for initiating this project, which we hope we will be able to replicate. Our Rajman program, which is staffed by Ilana Volodowski, for Russian American Jews of Minnesota, continues to build strong connections with hundreds of Russian American Jews. 39 participants completed a fellowship program this year where they learned to develop their own leadership skills. Again, building future leaders for our community. These are just a few examples of how Federation is engaging the broader Jewish community and partnering with our agencies and our synagogues. And how does the future of the Federation look? I'm very excited to tell you it looks bright. Here are the few things that we hope to accomplish this coming year, including continuing the work that Rabbi Rothstein has laid out for us to address how we can better serve the diversity of our community. First, we recently agreed to partner with the Foundation for a Jewish Camp to offer scholarships to children who will attend a residential Jewish camp for the first time. We know that Jewish camping experiences are one of the most successful ways of strengthening Jewish identity in children. It will supplement our current camp scholarship program, allowing more children to benefit from Jewish camping experiences. Next, we are committed to re-examining our role in supporting Jewish education in our community. We recognize that this is a very hot topic for our community, very important that we address it. And we were about to address it when COVID hit last spring. And we plan to reinstate the task force to look at this issue and come back with resolutions. Third, one of the priorities of the listening project that we conducted a number of years ago was to create a warmer and more welcoming community. Again, going back to the idea that we need to reach out and make everyone feel welcomed in St. Paul. One of the recommendations was for the Federation to create a concierge program. The need for such a program was reinforced by the findings of the population study, which indicated that 11% of Jews in St. Paul, 11% have moved here within the last 5 years of when the study was conducted. And an incredible 48% felt that not knowing many people limited their communal participation, and 38% just felt they weren't welcomed. We need to do a better job, and we need to explore how we can develop such a program which would not only benefit the Federation, but all of our institutions. Fourth, strengthen the annual campaign, the cornerstone of what Federation's work is. As Rick stated, our 2021 campaign is off to a strong start. I am happy to report so are our 2022 and 2023 campaigns. Yes, we are already soliciting for those campaigns. This year, our campaign leadership team came up with an idea to create a new giving society called the Gimel Society. Its strategy is based on using a capital campaign model of multi-year commitments. However, instead of asking donors to invest in building comprised of brick and mortar, We are asking donors to invest in building a community comprised of our agencies, comprised of our programs, and comprised of its members. Gilmore Society members make commitments to the 2021, 2022, and 2023 annual campaigns and agree to increase their giving by a minimum of 10% each year. The goal is to help donors understand that their donations are more than just an annual gift. They are investments in the future of their community. And fortunately, I'm excited to say many donors have responded positively. And to date, we have secured more than $850,000 to our 2021 campaign, $420,000 for our 2022 campaign, and $360,000 for our 2023 campaign. We have never been so far ahead in our future campaigns as we have today. When you are contacted by one of our ambassadors, and each of you will be contacted, I promise you that, they will be able to fully explain the program and its benefits, not only to you, but to our community. Finally, we believe that all these initiatives will position the Federation for increased giving, resulting in stronger campaigns and enhancing our ability to increase our support for our partner agencies, which we all want to do. Of course, none of this can be done without dedicated volunteers, generous donors, and committed staff. And I want to say I am blessed and fortunate to be working with Rick Linsk and for his support and determination to ensure that the Federation is constantly moving forward, and fortunate that we have equally committed board members. And again, I'm very excited about the new board members who are coming on. Our campaign leadership is passionate and generous with their time, talent, treasure, and willingness to share their passion with others. And I am so fortunate. Our lay leadership is number one. And finally, I want to thank the staff, because without them, I couldn't get my job done. And first, I want to just welcome Dan Mogelson. Most of you already know Dan, but I want to welcome Dan Mogelson back to the St. Paul Federation, where he belongs as our new Chief Development Officer. He knows Federation, he knows St. Paul, and he's deeply committed and cares about our community. I also want to thank the other Federation staff and recognize them. It has been a difficult year for each of them, and they have just done an incredible job. If you'll allow me just to, I don't get a chance to give them a shout out, but I'd like to just take a minute to do that. One is Diane Orth, who is our database manager, who's been with us for more than 30 years. Kimberly McLaughlin, my executive assistant, who without her, I would be totally lost and unorganized. Julie Swiler, who is leading our marketing efforts. Emma Dunn, who is doing incredible outreach to young leaders. Lauren Kaplan, who's the director of the Harry K. Leadership Program, where our next group of leaders will also be coming from. Alana Waldowski, who I mentioned, who's running Rajman with incredible outreach to Russian American Jews. Stacy Dockman, our community program coordinator, who oversees our P2G program and PJ Library, along with Anna Budenstein, who is our PJ Library coordinator. Sharon Pessis, who's been with us for 23 years, and our associate campaign director, and knows everything and everyone in this community. Michael Stiefel Alpin, who's our marketing intern, who unfortunately his last day is Monday. He's accepted another internship, but we are so grateful for his contributions in our marketing efforts. And you have seen them. If you've seen our marketing, a lot of that can be attributed to Michael. And Michael, thank you. While not officially staff, we have a great accounting team through the CLA, Barbara Diekman, Katie Kleisman, and Amy Mithon. And finally, to Kesha Belinsky Edry, our community shlicha, who you will hear more about, but she has been incredible being our shlicha and the face of Israel. We are very fortunate to have all of the staff. I also want to do a shout out to two wonderful colleagues and friends of mine who stepped forward right when I needed them. Susan Lieberman and Morton Amon. They filled a void when I was looking for a new chief development officer. They offered to come on board and help during this transition, and they've been incredibly helpful. So I already mentioned Keshet, our community shlicha, and Keshet's time in serving in this capacity will be ending soon. and she will be returning to Israel. I want to thank her for her dedication despite not being able to conduct in-person programming, which is a major function of any shlichah's job. Her impact, though, in St. Paul has been tremendous. And I've asked Jonathan Eisenthal, chair of our P2G committee and one of Keshet's host families, to say a few words about Keshet.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jonathan Eisenthal. I'm the chairman of the Partnership Together committee, and I'd like to celebrate a very special person tonight, Keshet Berlinski Edry, our community shlichah for the past 2 years. Just a wonderful, wonderful person, and soon leaving us, but always in our hearts. Keshet, you taught our students at the 3 synagogues and Talmud Torah. You taught art classes, you taught cooking classes, Hebrew for adults at the JCC. You brought speakers, and you created fabulous programs like the Tu B'Shvat tree planting in our partnership area in Israel, Sovev Kinneret. Through your efforts, we have been able to plant more than 200 trees there. Fabulous. I want to spend a moment to talk about your qualities, which I'm sure everybody knows, but I want to say this out loud. You are warm, brilliant, engaging, empathetic, intuitive, a true talent with language you have, and a very special ability to reach people. So you're just the perfect shlichah. The most important thing, though, that you taught all of us, I think, Israel is a part of us, and we are a part of Israel. It's a precious gift that you've given us. And Keshet, finally, I want to say mazel tov to you and all your future endeavors. You are forever part of our family here in the St. Paul Jewish community. We will say not goodbye, but lehitraot, and we'll be seeing you soon in Israel. Keshet.
Thank you, Jonathan. Keshet, you had indicated that you would like to say a few words.
Yes, this is very emotional for me. Hello, everybody. Thank you for giving me the time. I'll be brief because it's late. So I just want to say, first of all, a huge thank you in the personal level. To be a shlicha was a dream of mine for many, many years, and you have all made my dream come true, and I really, really appreciate it. The second thing I want to say thank you in a professional level. As Jonathan mentioned, I had the opportunity to teach this year, this last 2 years, and I did the math and I taught a little bit over 600 lessons. We did over 20 community events, and we were able to do an amazing thing, which is raising over $4,000 to plant trees in Israel. So even though this year may have not been the regular year, we still had an amazing and remarkable year, and I really appreciate your participation. I just want to acknowledge the fact that I'm a part of a chain. I'm not the first shlicha, and I'm definitely not the last shlicha. So please make sure to stay in touch with the next shliach and give him the warm welcome that he deserves. And I bet he's going to do amazing, incredible things. And last but not least, I think that shlichut is not a one-way journey. It's not just me bringing Israel to you. It's me taking your experiences back to Israel. Just like some Americans might not understand the complexity of life in Israel, I don't think every Israeli understands the complexity of Jewish life outside of Israel. And I take it very seriously to make sure that we keep that connection alive, just as much as the personal connections, because I made amazing friends here. I really, truly love you all, and I hope we will stay in touch. So thank you so much for the opportunity, and I hope to see you in my goodbye party on Sunday. So thank you.
Keshet, thank you so much, and you've really been a treasure for us, and you will be missed. And I'll tell you, one of my highlights of the 2 years was when your mom came to visit, and we got to go out together, and I understood where you got your personality from and all the wonderful traits that you have. So we will stay in touch and we'll see you on Sunday. We also are looking forward, as much as we will miss Keshet, looking forward to welcoming our new Shaliach, Hadar Pe'er, who arrives later this week. And fortunately, there will be some time for Keshet and Hadar to overlap, so Keshet can bring Hadar up to date about the wonderful aspects of the St. Paul Jewish community and how fortunate he is coming to us rather than some other place in the US. So we're looking forward to that. So I know it's getting late, and so I'm going to run down. And so I want to announce the following, and I mentioned this with mixed emotions. After 23 years of really true, incredible dedication and love for the St. Paul Jewish Federation and our community, Sharon Pessis has decided to retire by the end of this year. She has been such an integral part of the Federation and of our community, an incredible colleague and friend, just tremendous and irreplaceable. And this is not the venue or the time to pay tribute to her. She really deserves a much more celebratory opportunity for the community to recognize the wonderful contributions that she has made. And we will be planning something later this year so the entire community can come out and thank her and recognize her for the incredible woman and professional and member of our community that she is. And so she has assured me that even after retirement, she will continue to be involved with Federation. I know many of you, like me, wish her all the best and recognize the incredible contributions that she has made. And I hope many of you will reach out to her. I'm sure she would appreciate it. I want to just mention that we do have a couple of upcoming events. One is Keshet's Going Away Party. Another one is on September the 1st. We will have another cooking program with Michael Solomonov. I hope you will all attend. And finally, when your ambassadors call, do answer the phone. Until we meet next year, take care, stay healthy. Thank you for attending tonight, and have a great week. Thank you all.
Thanks everybody.